All right. So what we're going to do with Rowan, and we're going to talk, and we're going to focus on product launches in particular, but I guess anything product marketing is fair game. Guys, questions tab is yours, so please use that. I'm going to start off with my own questions here, but then I would love to field questions from you guys. Okay, so on the topic of product launches, why should product marketing drive this as opposed to anybody else from marketing or product managers?
Yeah, it's a great question. And Pep, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you great, man.
Okay, fantastic. It's quite frankly, product marketing is, I refer to them as the connective tissue between the product organization and the revenue engine. And so when you bring these two together, normally there's a bone-on-bone friction, if you will. And so product marketing, I view them as the connective tissue of these two organizations that let them both get along and interlock with each other in a much more cohesive manner. So a product marketer has to do three things. They have to understand the voice of the market. They have to understand the voice of the customer segments they choose to serve, the voice of the competitors even. They take that voice and they translate it into the value that is going to resonate with their chosen customers. They also then have to take that voice and value and allow the velocity of the sales pipeline to be influenced with the right insights, with the right narrative, with the right messaging, with the right stories, with the right content. So if the role of the product marketer is to drive the voice, the value, and the velocity of this organization, who better to be the launch captain, if you will, for the organization?
Right. So if we wanted to do product launches in a, let's say, structured fashion, as opposed to ad hoc and like, oh, hey, we ship some stuff, let's find out what to do now. So how are we setting up a proper process for this? What are the foundational steps to developing a repeatable, scalable launch discipline at the B2B tech companies and others as well?
Yeah, so great question, Pep. And so the first and foremost, you need the right mindset. The organization needs the right mindset. And product launch is a discipline. Product launch is a discipline. And so if you treat product launch as a discipline, the organization needs to understand that there's a set process, there are certain stages, there are certain tasks, there are certain stakeholders that need to be part of this discipline whenever you're getting ready to release a product or a release. And that's really the first thing. It's a discipline. And then the foundational steps that are critical to getting this discipline off on the right foot is such. So step one, always select a launch captain. And that launch captain, you can call him a launch program manager, a launch lead. For me, I call them launch captains because they're the captain of this team that's going to go through a journey for the next little while. So you need that captain, and more often than not, for the reasons I said before, that should be a product marketer. The second step is you need to define who the launch teams are. And I say launch teams, Pep, because you need a core team, which is your product manager of the actual product, your product marketer, who is the launch captain. Ideally, you have a project manager to see things through. And then you need your executive sponsor of the launch. And you always need an executive sponsor of the launch because launches are a whole company initiative. It's a discipline and it involves the entire company, most of the functions in a company. So you have your core team made up of those 4 individuals. Then you have your cross-functional team. Typically for mid-market to large enterprise, you're looking at anywhere from 10 to 15 departments that are involved in this cross-functional team. And you do need members of the product organization and members of the revenue engine as part of this cross-functional team. And I'm going to say the word revenue engine a few times in this conversation, and When I talk about revenue engine, I'm talking about sales, marketing, customer success, support, the organizations within the revenue engine that touch the market or the customer. So you got your launch captain, you got your launch teams, plural. Next, you have to determine what type of launch is this? Is it a tier 1, 2, 3? Gartner refers to it as major, minor, or just a weekly, monthly release. So for a major launch, it's typically 6 to 9 months of prep work. For a minor launch, you're looking at 2 to 6 months. And then for your weekly, monthly releases as such. So you have your captain, you have your teams, you determine what kind of launch. Based on what type of launch it is, major, minor, or release, you now have to set your stages. For me, there's 6 stages, always, in a launch. Each stage has a gate. And we used the word discipline before. And so this stage gate process is a must if this is going to be a disciplined approach to launch. And so each stage, there's 6. Each of the stages, there's tasks in each of the stages. And the number of tasks depends on if it's a major or minor or a release. Each task has a primary owner and then contributors. And those need to be defined. Each task has a work back schedule. Project manager typically is good at keeping that on track. And then each task is designated as mandatory, recommended, optional. And again, that depends on if it's a major, minor, or just a release. Launch captain, launch teams, type of launch. Set your stages, if you will. The 5th part of the foundational phase of starting a project, a product launch product is refining. Or even ideally, you're not doing this for the first time when this group gets together, but you're either determining or you're refining the need or the problem that's being solved by this launch. And alignment on this is critical because every launch needs a story, and that story needs to be rooted in a problem being solved or a need being met. This may sound rudimentary, but you'll be shocked how many times I've been in a launch and I get there and the first question I ask is, why are we doing this launch? What problem are we solving? And we don't have a clear articulation of that. Then you have to define and address the market. So everyone, for this launch, we think that the market is so-and-so. Most often, the market is this big that you address the launch for. But really, the customer segments that you can actually win with and influence are here. Much smaller subset. You got to get razor focused. I have yet to meet a launch captain or an organization that gives marketing an infinite budget. So we have to get razor focused in the market, the customers we're going to serve, and also understanding the competitors that we're going to compete against. So we play to win with customers. And we must play to win against competitors. So we have to understand this early on, very rudimentary, but it has to be addressed as a foundational piece of a launch. And that's when you then bring in sales to say, listen, we understand the problem we're solving. Our market initially we thought was here, but we're going to go focus in on this customer segment. This is where we think we can win. Now let's start preliminarily putting together some forecasts. What does success look like? How many customers, existing customers, do we feel are going to adopt this? How many net new customers do we think we can actually go and get in a defined period of time? And that conversation has to happen in the foundational parts of a launch. And then you figure out, because I've yet to meet a marketing team that has a plethora of resources, what are the external agencies and external help that you need to supplement your efforts? Either you have a skill set gap or you just want to accelerate efforts. And so you have to bring in external resources. And that you have to think about well in advance, because I don't know of an agency that's sitting around twiddling their thumbs waiting to just help when the opportune time strikes. So you have to bring them in early on. And with all that done, then Pep, you can set your initial launch target date. Because at that point, the hamster in the head is going full speed and you're like, oh my God, there's so much work to be done. We can't launch in 2 weeks, which is my all-time favorite. Hey, marketing, can you help us launch in 2 weeks? We have everything ready. You got to launch 6 weeks, 6 months out, 9 months out, depending on major, minor, or whatnot. And then you get that, management buy-in for the dedication of all the functions that need to help you and a point from each of those teams, and then the incremental budget that you need. So that management buy-in is crucial. And that's the foundational tasks, if you want to call it, steps that every launch captain needs to do before they approve that we're going to move forward.
All right, there's quite a bit that goes on there. So how big of a, what's too small of a release to build a launch around?
Too small of a release.
Because you say it's like 6 to 9 months planning is optimal, but if you release every 2 to 4 weeks, bunch of stuff. So how often do you do this?
So the way I define the different types of launches, so a major launch is there's an exponentially net new product or a significant upgrade to an existing product that is going to require a lot of change management from your customers or your internal teams, meaning how your sales folks sell and how your customer success individuals support. So that's how I define a major launch. A minor is incremental changes to a set of features, or it could be a net new product, but it's not going to drive a lot of change on your customer side. It's not going to drive revenue change too much. So I would deem that as minor. And then a release, a weekly release, monthly release, as you refer to it. Some of those things, especially those things, require a repeatable process, because then they still require activities. You still need to enable your sales reps, enable your customer success folks. You have to influence the market. You have to talk to analyst folks and let them know that your product these releases are coming down the pipeline, and it's going to help in XYZ manner. Here are the outcomes that it's going to go drive. So whether it's major, minor, or a release, you always need to be thinking about a launch process. You just weight down the level of activities and tasks.
Mm-hmm. So since it's so involved, a lot of things can go wrong. So what are the typical launch challenges you've seen?
Lots. Plenty. So there's no order to what I'm about to say, but I would say not setting goals for your product launch, not having, what does success look like? And you'd be shocked at how many people launch, even though it's a quick launch, as you mentioned, alluded to, even if it's a weekly release or a monthly release, there has to be a goal for that release, must. Then lack of adequate prep time. So like I said, it takes for minor to major 3 to 9 months on average to launch a product well. So when we say launch, we're not talking about 3 to 9 months, Pep, from the time the product's built. What I'm saying is when the product's starting to get built, or ideally just before that, when it's approved to be built, that's when product marketing and the revenue engine team needs to be brought into the loop. So I hope people don't think that, 9 months, 6 to 9 months, I don't have that once the product's built. We need to get revenue for it. That 6 to 9 months precedes the actual launch of the product, meaning when the product itself is ready. So lack of adequate prep time is probably the number one reason why launches fail. Delays in product development, and I'm not just always going to blame product, but delays in commercial readiness. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. So enabling sales is part of commercial readiness. If your sales teams don't believe in the product or don't feel they have the adequate tools to sell the product, or quite frankly, they don't think that the product is ready for the market, you've lost credibility. And they're going to turn their attention to the surefire product that's going to help meet their quota. They care about their quota. And so delays in product development and commercial readiness is one of the challenges. Lack of experienced product personnel, and not product personnel, product launch personnel. So launch is a discipline. It's not a checklist of items. It's a discipline. And so if we treat it as a discipline, there needs to be professionals that understand the discipline of launch. They have to be adept at building relationships with cross-functional teams. They have to be adept at executing in a project management framework. They have to be adept at speaking to the technical side of the house on product, as well as understanding what the revenue engine needs. So the lack of an experienced product launch personnel in an organization, for me, regardless of how good the product is and how eager the sales team is, that can be detrimental to product launch success. Lack of a formal process, the 6 stages I told you about, whether it's 4 stages, whether it's 8 stages, it'll be nuanced depending on the organization, but you do need a formal launch process that all the functional teams in product and the revenue engine are singing from the same songbook, if you will.
Right.
And just a couple more. The poor positioning, the poor messaging. Positioning and messaging isn't something you just do in 48 hours. It's a blend of having the right market insights and market research, knowing how your competitors are singing this tune in the market. And then there's the creative element of creating a position and a message in the market that resonates. That takes time. And so again, adequate lack of prep, adequate lack of time for each of these problems. That's the crux of most of the mistakes as to why product launches fail.
That those 6 stages and then the process, people asking in the chat, do you have it written down anywhere that something people can reference?
Yeah, happy to share, and I can also quickly go through them if you like.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the first stage I talked about with your first question is the foundation. It's the who is your launch captain, your launch team, ensuring you know your market, your customer segments, your competitors, aligning with sales and leadership to ensure that you have the right resources and targets, and setting a realistic launch date. Like that's stage 1. So that's setting the foundation, setting the groundwork for your successful launch. Stage 2 is about crafting the story, developing the marketing launch plan. And there's typically, depending on the type of launch, major, minor, or release, there's about 10 to 15 tasks that need to be done in stage 2. And this is everything from ironing out your beta customer program details, understanding your pricing strategy. What are the success metrics? What does success look like for this particular launch? Your positioning, starting to think about your positioning, your messaging, your revenue engine readiness. Like those are the types of tasks in stage 2. Stage 3 is all about gathering feedback internally and externally on some of the things you did in stage 2, like your initial inklings about positioning and messaging. So gathering feedback and also building your communication plan. So when people think about a communication plan, it is extensive. When you think about the stakeholders in a launch, internal, so you can't treat sales the same way you treat customer success. Different language, different content. Your demand generation, the people in marketing, they need to be enabled. Your leadership team needs to be enabled. And that's just a few. That's internal. Then there's the enablement and the readiness of communications for your external individuals, your prospects, your customers, your analysts, Gartner, Forrester, for example, IDC, your influencers. Who are the influencers in your marketplace that can help you evangelize your story? You got to get them ahead of what's going out into the marketplace so they can start priming. So that's what I mean by briefing internal and external stakeholders. That communication plan is massive. It's a massive amount of effort. Your PR strategy, your sales operational plan, so on and so forth. That's stage 3. Stage 4 is your all this content communication. You're now finalizing that. You're ensuring that the organization is operationally ready to launch this. You're ensuring that your sales team is ready to launch this. And so here you're doing things like there's typically about 20, 25 tasks in stage 4. So there's always the mundane tasks, such as working with legal on contracts and agreements, making sure that's in place. So you're not reacting to something that needs to be sold net new now. Finalizing your story, finalizing your talk scripts for all of your stakeholders, enabling marketing, pre-sales, sales, customer success, support. And this is also the stage 4, where you really should have different dashboards in place internally to gauge the success of this launch. What I mean by that is the success of this launch for product is a little bit different than marketing, a little bit different for sales, a little bit different than customer success. And then there's your leadership team. Each of them should have a dashboard. You should know where the data is coming from, and you should approve the data. So everyone's singing again and looking at the same moments of truth. And that's stage 4. And again, there's lots more tasks, but happy to share thereafter. Stage 5 is where the anxiety, really starts to percolate, because this is the art of launch. This is the week or the day where launch happens in stage 5. And so this is briefing your analysts so they're ready when their customers come to speak to them, making sure that your sales teams and your partners teams have what they need to evangelize and sell. This is where you're priming the market. You're hitting go on your website, your press release, your social, your blogs, and so on and so forth, and customer communication. So that's stage 5. And I say 6 stages because most people miss the 6th stage. So when all is said and done and the launch, everyone's patting themselves on their back, most people a few weeks thereafter forget to sit down and learn through a cross-functional debrief. And this is stage 6. This is where you review the results against the dashboard, make sure you're tracking on the right note. But most importantly, this is where you document lessons learned, because if this is really meant to be a repeatable, scalable discipline, you're always learning and iterating. So that's just very briefly the 6 stages. Happy to share more. Reach out to me on LinkedIn and happy to share more.
Yeah, definitely. The audience seems to be eager to get their hands on a written version of what you just said. But one thing you said, that every launch needs to be measured. It needs to have metrics. So which metrics can we attribute to launch besides the obvious that, new customers are signing up for this new product?
So I love this question because, and perhaps this is the first question for any launch discussion, should be on the metrics and how do you measure success. So every launch plan should include a description of your metrics and a dashboard, and in some cases different dashboards depending on the audience. And when I say audience, I mean leadership versus sales versus marketing, so on and so forth. And then rather than just showcase a list of like product launch metrics, and blurt out a bunch of product launch metrics, each dashboard has to tell the story for that stakeholders. And here's what I mean by that. The primary metrics for any launch, there's typically 5 buckets. And the weighting of these 5 buckets will depend on your audience, leadership versus sales versus marketing versus product. So the first one is new product growth. This is, like you mentioned, the rudimentary things, but you'd be shocked how many people don't actually measure this and track this. So new product growth is your revenue, new deals, units sold, response rates, upgrade rates, migration, product, blah, blah, blah. That's new product growth. The second is adoption. Like, what's the attach rate, sales support readiness, training completed. And when I say, sorry, let me preface this by saying adoption from your sales team, your internal stakeholders, as well as customer adoption. So 2 types of adoption. So attach rate, sales and support readiness. How many trainings have we completed? How many certifications have we, and certifications is more for like a major or minor, definitely not for releases. Certifications have been, sales content usage, customer adoption. So that's the adoption bucket. The third is retention. So has this product, net new product or net new release, what has that done for your retention rates? Because you build product, it's the lifeblood of your organization, yes, to go get net new business, but more importantly, it's to keep customers happy continuously and sustainably. So retention needs to be a third bucket. Position is your fourth bucket, and that's what's your share in the market with this net new product. We talked at the top of the call about understanding which market you're going to play in, and then within that market, which customer segments you're going to go and serve. So with the introduction of this new product, have you taken more market share from your competitors? What's your win-loss ratio? Like your average accounts, have they grown with this product? And then the fifth bucket is more of a marketing metric, and that's just efficiency. So as we're going through this discipline that is launched and we're repeating it and scaling it, like the program cost, campaign ROI, cost per SQL, I'm talking specifically for launches. The efficiency of your launch spend should, if it's major to major launch, go down because you're learning and iterating per stage 6. So then, there's the typical pipeline conversion rates, pipeline velocity, trial response rates, pipeline volume, average deal size. Ideally, you're introducing a product that is going to increase your share of wallet, increase your deal size, your influencer share of voice. And so there's 5 buckets of how you measure, and then there's a host of metrics. And again, happy to share if people reach out through LinkedIn a little bit more about how I personally measure according to those 5 buckets.
So these metrics that you're speaking of, these are also like just the business metrics that business is measuring. So who is then owning these metrics? Is it the head of product marketing, or and where does like growth come in, and whoever owns retention at a company? Might be head of growth, might be somebody else. What does VP brand own, like share of voice, and like so?
It's a brilliant question, Pep. And my take is this: launch is a team sport. And so if you have your offense, I'm Canadian, I'm a hockey guy. And so you have your offense, you have your defense, you have your goalie. Each of those 3 groups have their own metric. Everyone wants to win the game. That's the team metric. Everyone wants to win the game. Win versus loss, overall metric that everyone contributes to. But then the offense have their own metrics, the defense have their own metrics, and the goalie has his or her own metrics. And the same with the launch. Marketing, the focus of marketing is to ensure that the pipeline is healthy. And then there's associated metrics to that pipeline. You talk about brand as well. Absolutely. But, share of voice and all is fantastic. The consequent result of brand effort is pipeline. Like the pipeline needs to be fat and healthy. The consequent effort of brand effort in a launch is also related to your retention and expansion. So marketing, sales, customer success, those 3, especially in a launch, will own the majority of the metrics. And as such, as I said earlier, each will have its own unique dashboard. A point of contention for me is when you're thinking of the CPG world, Procter & Gamble, Tide detergent. If you want to know how Tide detergent is doing, there is one throat to choke. I need a better expression.
Yeah.
The brand manager for Tide detergent is not just the individual that's creating the funky Tide detergent commercials. 98% of their time, it's on analytics and strategy. The commercial part is 2%, meaning they own the P&L for Tide detergent. I don't know many companies in B2B, and this should change. It should absolutely change. I firmly believe the product marketer needs to be the brand manager of that product or portfolio of products, depending on the company. And that product marketer should be responsible for the P&L of that brand. product, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And that's me being biased because I'm a product marketer. Some say the product manager should own that. Fine. There should be one individual that is responsible for the P&L of that product. We're not there yet. And if there are companies doing that in the B2B tech space, please reach out and let me know. I'd love to learn more.
Rowan, we're out of time. It was a pleasure having you. Didn't get to all the questions here. So people can connect with you on LinkedIn. You seem to be active there. Anywhere else people can reach out?
So I have this thing called the Product Marketing Community. Started it 5 years ago, labor of love. It's not a commercial entity. It's literally something I do for fun when the 3 kids are in bed and my full-time job as a VP of product is done for the day. So productmarketingcommunity.co, check it out, or LinkedIn. LinkedIn's probably the best way to get a hold of me. But Pat, thank you for having me. I love everything that you're doing, especially with the Wynter series, and we're more so in spring now. So maybe change the name to the spring conference, and we'll do another one in December for the Wynter. But love everything you're doing. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Rowan. I'll catch you later, man.
Have a good one. Bye.